Hello, I'm John Baker from the Hovells Creek Landcare Group. Over the past few years we've had a New South Wales Environment Trust funded paddock tree planting project, and we've actually planted over 2,000 paddock trees across 23 member properties. And in fact this here is one of the trees that were planted, and this is now 4 years old. And if we look across to the back here, there's another tree part of the project that's planted 2 years ago. I want in this video to talk to you about the benefits of planting paddock trees in autumn as distinct from planting them in spring, because we've had much better success with trees planted in autumn. Tube stock trees are available from tree nurseries from late summer onwards. So you have a choice. You can plant them in autumn as soon as the ground's damp enough, when you've had enough rain. Alternatively, you can hold them over winter, and they're usually just held by the nursery, and then effectively the same stock of tree after a wintering in the nursery is planted in springtime. We've found is that trees planted in autumn get their roots established out into the surrounding soil over the winter. The top of the plant doesn't grow much, but the roots spread out, and then when spring comes, they're ready to really sort of take off and grow well. Not just that, if you happen to get a dry spring or a hot dry summer, because they've got that established root system, they're much more resilient and have a much higher survival rate than other tube stock that's been planted in spring, which hasn't really had a chance to get established to the same extent. To test this idea that autumn planting is much more effective than spring planting, in April 2020, 12 months ago, we took 15 yellow box tube stock seedlings from the nursery and we planted them in the 3 rows. This row here, this row and the far row. We then set aside 15 of the same batch of seedlings and left them in the nursery over the winter. And when spring came in September, about 7 months ago, we planted a second row of each one, which is on your left of each of these double rows. And of course the $1,000 question is, well, how do they compare? All right, let's have a look at some of the results. This double row here, for example. On the right, we've got the autumn plantings. Consistently taller than the spring plantings, but not just taller, a lot more side growth, a much sort of thicker, denser growth. If we look at the row across here, the right hand row again looking better, taller, and in fact the left hand spring row one's died, and there's one at the back there that's really looking quite sick. We go across to this double row here. On the right was the autumn planting, on the left the spring planting. Again, the autumn planting taller, whereas compared with the height of the spring, and we've lost a spring planting here. So across the board, I think it's pretty clear that you are getting significantly better results from autumn planting, including the fact, of course, you're getting a much better survival rate. Whereas all 15 autumn tube stocks survived, only 13 of the spring plantings survived, and there's another one that's looking fairly sick. And all of this, of course, against the backdrop of a very good season. I suspect had we had a dry spring or a particularly hot dry summer, then the spring plantings would have been much more stressed and we might have had a much higher loss rate. And of course, remember, there was no watering of these trees during the season at all. We just planted them, watered them in well, and then left them, which of course is the case when you're doing a lot of paddock tree planting right out in the paddock. In concluding, let's remember that planting paddock trees is an expensive business. both in terms of time and money. So you've got to be able to get it right, and that's why we're paying a lot of attention to this sort of issue. I hope this video has been of some use to you. I just mentioned, of course, that we do have a number of other paddock tree videos on the Hovells Creek Landcare Group site, plus some technical notes, etc. Happy planting!